Okay, so today is I think the third day. We're going to be learning advanced CSS. We're going to be learning FlexBox, and it's going to be a lot of information, and we'll get to it. So let me share my screen so we can get started. Um, all right, I think you see my screen now. So today we'll learn advanced CSS, FlexBox, and responsive web design. You will be working with CSS. You have worked with CSS and you build a website with HTML and CSS. We will learn advanced CSS today. So you will be able to use advanced elements in CSS. So to get started, I wanted to do the slide. Have a slide presentation. I think this is the last one, or maybe the JavaScript one is the last one to do a slideshow presentation. So let's get into it, inshallah. So to get started, the advanced CSS, some of the advanced CSS are child selectors. The child selectors is represented by the sign greater than, and it allows you to target elements that are direct children of the particular element. There's also dynamic pseudo classes. So dynamic pseudo classes are two types. There are the ones that are related to link, and there are ones that are user action, and there are ones that are related to link. Um, there's also um, there's also other pseudo classes like first child. The first child pseudo class allows you to target elements that are the first child of another element, and we will see an example of this in a little bit when we finish with this slide. There's also before and after. I'm sure you guys have seen before and after. Before and after, they are also inserted in CSS. They're not in HTML, and you can insert content before an element or after an element. So just using CSS, you could put like emoji or something or image or something into a before an element or after an element using just CSS. We will also look into how to style forms. We will also just touch on forms and how they work and things like that. So forms are basically very important for web design. If you know how to style forms, work with forms, it's gonna be easier for you to build the websites. So forms are basically they have something called input, and if you want to target the input in CSS, you target it this way. You say the input type, and then you say text, and we'll see example of this. We'll go through it. Um, there's also there's also something called focus. It's a pseudo class. This focus pseudo class is connected to the input. You could also use it for other places, but in a form, the focus pseudo class helps you style a form when you click it, when you focus on it. So we'll see example of that too. We will also learn Fluxbox. This is going to change everything you have learned. So Fluxbox will change everything you learned from previously. So everything we were doing before, it was manual. You were doing, you were asked to put together boxes. You were asked to put width and height and things like that. Float things and create an inline. All that stuff will go out of the window when we use Fluxbox. So Fluxbox is a layout mode that provides for better arrangement of all page elements, and that behaves in predictable mode. And we'll see what that means in a little bit. Fluxbox layout gives you complete control over the direction, alignment, and order and size of the boxes. And we'll see, inshallah, we'll see how you could activate Fluxbox. You just say display flux, and then everything changes. Fluxbox is purely JavaScript, not JavaScript. It's purely CSS, and it's not a something external. It's not a plugin or anything. So it's built in CSS. So we'll learn a lot about Fluxbox today. We'll dedicate the second half of the whole lecture for just Fluxbox. Um, and also we'll learn all the properties of Fluxbox. So FlexBox has a flex container, flex item, flex direction, and a lot more elements that it uses. So all those things we will learn how to implement those and how they work together to make a website look really nice. So this is how FlexBox looks like. FlexBox has something called container. So this container is the parent element or the parent container, and then it has items, which are the children. So items, these are the ones that you will start basically use the display flex for. So first you will apply display flex on the parent container, and then the children containers or the children elements will align automatically. So you don't have to say, okay, take this space or take this much space. They will automatically take as much space as they need. So we will see how that looks like, and it's really really powerful. Flex the direction basically helps you the direction. So if you want elements to align horizontally, you will use the flex direction row. If you want them to align vertically, then you will use the column. So you will learn that. Also, we will learn responsive web design. There are many types of responsive web design we will see, but the one that is most important that we will focus on is responsive layout. So responsive layout combines the different types of responsive methods. For example, the fixed method, adaptive, and the fluid methods. We'll also use media queries. We'll touch on that, which are very, very important for responsive. We'll also talk about viewport in a little bit, and the viewport is in HTML. You might have seen it before. So some of the features of responsive layout. So responsive layout, in general, I want to paraphrase. I don't want to read everything in here. You have the slide. Basically, if you want your website to show in a mobile, in a computer, a large computer, in a big screen, in a small device, then you have to use responsive layout, and that we will see how that works out. We'll also learn a little bit about CSS units. So CSS units are the units that you were using, the BX, the pixels. So pixels are called absolute lengths. Basically, it means they don't change. They don't morph into the page. So they will stay the same. So if you have 20 pixels, it will always be 20 pixels. It will not be bigger or or smaller. There's also relative lengths right here. So relative lengths are M, rem, and then there is VW, there's VH, there's percentage. So we use the percentage. We haven't used the rest. So so those are also important for responsive web design. Um, it's also important to use these for if you want to design a website and you want it to look like you want it to show in mobile and in desktop and different things. We will learn viewport. Viewport is really important. If you don't have a viewport in your website, the responsive layout that you're working on will not work. So make sure you have viewport. Viewport is a meta tag. So at the top of your HTML document in the header, so where it says head, you put meta and then name equal to viewport, and then content is equal to width, which is equal to device, which is equal to widgets minus width, and then initial scale is 1.0. So this part where it says width is equal to device minus minus width, it means that part sets the width of the page to follow the screen width of the device. So that means basically, so every time the device changes from, let's say, from mobile to computer, the page kind of like adjusts and changes. So that's what it means when that phrase, that what they said over there. So the initial scale, it means initial scale sets the initial zoom level when the page is set to the first loaded browser. That means, you know how you zoom you could zoom your browser. You could say, okay, control plus plus plus, and then it will zoom in. So that the initial, when you visit a website, the initial zoom should be 1.0. So if someone wants to zoom the website and make it bigger, then that's fine. But the initial or the default should be 1.0. So that's where you set the initial scale. So and also another important part of the viewport is that it removes horizontal scroll, and also it only allows vertical scroll. And this is important for mobile, because if you go to an app, they don't have a horizontal bar at the bottom. So the app is just basically, it takes over the whole page. You just scroll up. So that's so when you want a website to look like an app, then you will use the viewport. We'll also touch on media queries. Media queries help you to make your website adjust or adapt to basically to different devices. So if you want something to appear in mobile and not to appear in desktop, you use media queries. So that's usually how you use media queries, and we'll see. So let's get started. Um, let's go back. That's it for the slides. I know it's been a lot of slides here, but let's get back to it. See, Abdulkadir is here. Abdulkadir, how you doing?
Fine, fine, brother.
Mashallah, mashallah. How's it going? You sent me a message last night, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I late it to submit.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay, mashallah. That's good. Good, mashallah. You guys are doing great. It's a lot to take in, but you guys are doing great, inshallah. Soon you will see yourself as a great developer, mashallah. You'll get there. So yeah, so let's get started with the lesson. What do we have here? So the first thing would be the advanced CSS. So selectors. So let's explain these selectors. So selectors, we did touch on a little bit what selectors are before. So H1, let's say H1 is a selector. P paragraph is a selector. So every time you go to your CSS and you choose something from the HTML and then you style it, that is a selector. So there is also something called child selector. Child selector means if you wanna select something that is lower than the what do you have. For example, you have, let's say you have a ID called sidebar, and you want to select an H1 right underneath that sidebar, then you use the greater than sign like that. So greater than sign, and then you choose that. It has to be right directed to it, otherwise it will not work. So that's how you use a child selector. You could also choose descendant. It's called, this is descendant. Descendant means a descendant means a child, and grandchild a grandchild. So so baddie, and then you go to div, and then you go to the div block, block quote. So you go all the way deep into the layer. You don't have to use this. I really don't recommend a lot of times to use this, but if you want to use it, you could use it. But these days you could also, without even putting the child selector, the greater than sign, you could select the child selector without that too. So there's two options. We will not go deep into this because you will rarely use this. Also, pseudo classes. This is also important. There is dynamic pseudo classes. So dynamic pseudo classes are pseudo classes that when the user is or has interacted with the website. So they happen when someone interacts with the website. So let's see what they are. So there are two types of dynamic pseudo classes. One is user action, and the other one is let's see. So one is the link, and the other one is a user action. So the link one has two properties. It has the link property and the visitor property. So when you have a link, let's say you have like a hyperlink and you want to go to another website, when you click it, you could put the CSS and say when someone clicks the link, make it different color or something like that. So this is how you select that. And instead of, let's say, this one, say in focus, you could say visited, and then you could say, okay, different, change the color when the person clicks the link. There's also hover. I think you guys have seen hover before. And hover helps you style an element when the person hovers over. When they put their mouse over it, it helps you change that. So those are the two main things. There's also focus, which we will see when we're doing the forms. So there's focus. There's also active. So you could try these. I'll show you an example of one or two, but they're very useful. There's also a fast child selector. Fast child selector, we used it in our first HTML lesson. Fast child selector is, let's say you have a list of elements, and you want to select only the first one, and you want to style only the first one without giving it a, let's say, without giving it a class or ID or anything. You could select it by just taking the list and then put in semicolon, I mean columns, and then first child. So just like that, just first dash child, and then you could do whatever you want to the first element. So you didn't do anything in the HTML. All you did was you selected the first child. So that's important. There's also different ways of selecting it. Um, there's also the nth child selector. Maybe read this a little bit more, but let's say if you want to select the odd number of a list. So you have a list and you want to select, let's say, the first one, the third one, the fifth one, something like that, the odd numbers. Then this is what you use. So 2n is, let's see. So it says if you want to select the even ones, so you say 2n. If you want to select the odd ones, you say 2n plus 1. So you put 2n plus 1 here, and then you will just say nth child 2n plus 1. So that will select the odd numbers of the list. So there's so many ways. If you want to select the last element of a list and you want to style it, this is how you select it. And you could also, I mean, this is the last one. This one is if you want to start it from the bottom and you want to count it. So many ways. There's before and after. So yeah, so try those. We'll try maybe one or two, but first we'll start with a style and a form. So let's go to W3 schools and let's get started with forms. So forms are really important in web design. That's how you ask people to send you information. I think most of you know how to do them, but we'll go over it. So let's try this out. So let's say try it yourself. So right here we have a form. So how do you create a form in HTML to start with? Before we even do anything. So to start a form, let's just copy this and remove it. Now if we run, there's going to be nothing here. But if you wanna create one, let's start from scratch. So to start with, where did we? Okay, I think it's right here. Let me zoom in for a second. So to get started with the form, we will say form. We'll start with the form element. Let's give it a breathing space so we can see it. Hope you guys can see. You can see clearly. Form. So this is how you start your form. You say opening form, closing form, and then a form has a couple of things. It has label. It has an input. So if you wanna give it a label, you say label. I think that's how you spell it. Let's see. Yeah, we'll just go with it. Label, and then you give it a label, something like first name, and then you will say label. And then we will say something like so the label will just give it a name right here. So just a name to the input. So to create a input, you just put input here, and then you have to have a type. So the only thing you need to have is type. Type is the only required thing to have. So type, we will say something like text, and then we will close it. And input is a self-closing tag, so you don't have to create a closing tag. So this is how you create. So now you created the input. So this input, you could type whatever you want, first name, last name, but also you will need a button. The reason for that is you can't send a form without a button. If you fill out, how are you gonna send it? So to create a button, you create a normal button. So you could create it in different ways. You could create it like this and say something like submit button, right? That like that, and then they submit. Or you could create an input, just like this, normal input, and say type is equal to submit. So type is equal to submit. That will create a button too, but also you have to give it a value, which is submit. So let's do that. So as you can see, it's already styled because we have W3 Schools created the CSS for us, even if we have it already. So this is how you create the input, the submit button, and this is how you create. Also, there are different types. So there is the text type, which is the normal one. There's a number type. If you say number, you can't put any text in here. It will not allow you to put a text. So you have to put a number here. And also it has this scrolling thing where you could just increase the number. You also have just not a number, but you also have an email. So a lot of times the email, it will detect, but not every browser accepts that. There's also password. So this one is important too. So password. The reason why there's a password is because when you type, it gives you those dots that you have seen in passwords. So that's why it's really important to know the different types of input. So that's generally how you create a form. That's how you create the submit. In the future, we will learn how to like send it the form, how to like make it so that it works and you can send it through your website. But in general, that's how you create forms. So let's go back to how W2 Schools had it before we delete it. So like just like this. So W2 Schools just gave us more information. Right now, right here, it gave us this action in the form. So if you want to submit a form, you have to have something like that. You have to have that action. We will remove that. Also, the label can have a for element or for attribute. The reason for that is this is mostly for like screen readers. So we talked about the devices that read websites. If you want the device to know which label, this label, it doesn't know which input it belongs to. So you say for the name, and then you say ID for F name, so first name. So that's how it knows, okay, this input belongs to this label. As a human, you just assume that, you could see it, but as a device or robot, they don't know that. So it's good to have that, but you don't really have to have it. So you could get rid of that. There's also a name. So you could give the input a name. This name usually is used when you're trying to submit the form. Let's say you're using something like PHP. It requires you to have a name in your form. So that's also important. There's also placeholder. Placeholder is a text that you have it here, as you can see, your name, and it's right here. It's just a placeholder. It's a text that is already there. Test placeholder. Now here it will say test placeholder. So that's but it's not text that's on it. So when you type on it, it will just go away. So that's a form for you. Let's go to the CSS for the form. Let's actually let's just get rid of it so that we can get started from scratch. Let's just copy it so you guys can see. So now we have the form, but it's just squished and it doesn't look good. So I'll try my best to make it a little more decent than it is. So let's actually target a couple of things. So one thing you could do is you could target the actual form itself, and you could make it. You could change. You could make changes to it. Let's say margin and padding and things like that. But what we will do is we will target the input. And in our lesson, right here, it targets the input. So the input is right here. So the input, you have to give it a type a lot of times. So if you just say input, it will target every input. But if you want to target just, let's say, the text input, then you do that. So let's target that. So let's say input, let's say type is equal to text, and then we open our brackets and close it. Now we could do a lot of things with that. So we have a couple of texts. So we have this one, and that's it. Though we have those two. So if we want to style those, let's say we want to say width is equal to 100%, and we say run, it takes over the 100% width. So those two will take 100% width. Let's say we want to say something like we want to give maybe padding of of 30 pixels. Is way too big. Padding of 10 pixels. It gives that. Let's say we want to get rid of the border. We say border 0, and it gets rid of the border. Another thing it has is the browser by default has a focus. So as you can see, when you click it, the focus shows the borders. So if you want to get rid of that focus, what you could do is you could say input, and then you could say type, just the same thing at the top, type equal to text, and then here you say focus. So that means when the person clicks the form, do this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say border. Sometimes it works in some browsers, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see. So it still doesn't work in this browser. But what we could do is we could change probably the color of the border. We could say 2 pixels solid red. So yeah. So as you can see, it gives that. So so it gets, it gives the red, but also there is the black too. We can make this one bigger and say like something like 10. So now it's very thick, as you can see. So that's how you focus. Focus is basically, it's a pseudo class, basically saying just when you click it, do this. Let's go back to our lesson. So let's put these in the form. Let's just copy this and paste it in here. Let's go back. So this is not an editor, so it gives you all these issues. If we have an editor, it will automatically adjust this space for us. All right. So as you can see, it looks nice, but the focus thing is messing it up. So that's how you make it work. So if we go back, my camera turned off. If we go back, and so we did that, and we did the focus too. You could play around with this code bin. So just go ahead, click right here, code bin, edit on code bin, and it will take you to code bin. You could try it out. You could play around with it. So I created this one for you to try it out and add a few other CSS here, so the form looks nice. Maybe add like a submit button or something like that, and fork it before you change it. So you can practice with that. So I'll conclude the forms in that because we don't have a lot of time. We have to focus on other things too. So forms are like that. You just create them and then you select them. So if you want to select, let's say the other selectors, you just call their name, and then you style them. So I will say go to this website. I'll share it. Let me share. Go to this website and it gives you more information of how to select the different things. Let me put that in here. It gives you a reference of how to select the different things. If you want to select um, the select button or the options, things like that, this is where you get that. Also text area, you see. So there's also text area. And if you want to select let's say the select, so you just say select and then you style it the way you want. So this is good reference. You could also nest a couple of inputs. So if you want some inputs to be exact the same, you could just say the input type and then comma, and then the input type and then comma, and then all of them are going to have the same CSS. Okay. So that's forms. Do you guys have any question about forms? Any question about forms? Let me know. Let me get some water. And you guys cannot see me. Any questions? Let me know. Okay, let's get started with the second part of the lesson. So we will not talk about CSS animation. It's a little more advanced, and also it's not used all the time. I do not recommend you using a lot of CSS, animation. Maybe for like buttons or something like that, you could use them. And for example, talking about buttons, I forgot to just let you know about the hover pseudo class. So if you want to do the hover pseudo class, you do the same thing as we did on focus. So you could do something like input. You could do input type. Type is equal to text. And then you could say hover. That means when you hover over it, when you put your mouse on top of it, we could say something like background color, change background color to black, something like that. I'm not sure if that will work. See, so when we put our mouse on top of it, it changes. So that is a hover pseudo class. So it's really important. It's always used, so that's why I'm referencing it. But the animation is not always used. So if you want to go into the animation, feel free and try your best to. But just do a few examples and just understand it. But in reality, a lot of websites don't use animations. Okay. Any question whatsoever about that forms? I wanna give a poll. This is what I will use in the future, Polly. So Polly is it's our app in Slack. So so let's see. I understand form styling. Okay. And then I'm gonna select a few things here. So really good. Good. Okay. Not good. Okay, so you could go ahead and select one of those, and it's anonymous. I'm gonna make it anonymous, so I don't know who selected what. So I can go back, maybe just show you more examples. So go ahead. We don't have a lot of people here, but just choose any of these selections, and then I have an idea of where you guys at. Okay. So I'll use this in the future, inshallah, when we have a lot of people, because it's hard to ask everyone to respond. A lot of people don't want to respond. So just, I'm practicing this poll thing. Okay. All right. So just take your time and reply to that. Let's move on to the next lesson, which is FlexBox. So what do you guys think is FlexBox? So you could take the mic if you want. You could talk. Tell me, what do you understand about FlexBox? What is it? What do you think it is? Or you could just type if you want. Just one word or two words. What is FlexBox?
haddaan isku dayo afan FlexBox waxaa loo isticmaalaa yani CS-ka wuxuu leeyahay dhowr qayb oo loo sameeyo marka boxyada kala duwan. FlexBox marka waxaa weeyaan midka ugu fiican oo responsive-ka markaad samaynaysid la adeegsado.
That's good. That's
dowladda
good.
ugu fiican.
That's good answer. That's good answer. What do you guys think, Mohammed? What do you think is FlexBox?
Flexbox is actually it's when you're using Flexbox, it's giving you the space needed automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And it will give you it will give you the
You're right. You said it will give you the space you need. Definitely. Go ahead. You
will
wanted
give
to
you the
add something?
layout,
Yeah.
the
Oh, the
layout
layout.
mode
Yes,
you want.
layout.
Yeah, will give you the layout mode that you want it.
Good, good, good. Mashallah. Suhaib, you want to say something about it? What do you think it is? Okay, no problem, inshallah. So Fluxbox, as you guys said, it's a layout system. So you remember how when you guys were doing the styling of the last lesson, you were struggling how to put things next to each other. So you were struggling with how do you take two things and put next to each other easily without thinking about it. So that was the struggle. That struggle. You're right. It's a layout module. So that was the main problem from start of CSS was how do you take two pictures, put next to each other, and automatically they adjust the space. So when you zoom in, zoom out, the space adjusts and there's no issue. There's a lot of solutions. There is a something called CSS grid. There's a Flexbox. There's Bootstrap. Bootstrap uses actually Flexbox. So Bootstrap, the reason why it's very famous and everybody uses it is because it's already made thing for you. So already. So you don't have to think about it. That's why we're not using Bootstrap. It's because it's already made. So we want you guys to get used to getting deep into CSS, understanding the background. So that's why we never touched Bootstrap. You could use Bootstrap in the future, but you have to understand the technology behind it. The technology behind Bootstrap is a couple of things. One of the things is Flexbox. So Flexbox was something that was introduced to CSS, and it's part of the CSS. It's not something outside of CSS. It's native to CSS. So Flexbox was introduced because there was a lot of issue with layout. So if you want three things to be next to each other and they want to take this exact position, or let's say they want to take you want them to take a same portion, so you want that to be divided into like 33% or you want that to be divided into 50% automatically. You don't have to define the 50%, all that. Before that, people used to use columns. They used to use tables. So remember how I think Muhammad, we were doing the layout, and I told you to use something like table cell, display equal to table cell. That was the old way of using something. Now there is Flexbox, and it will make your life much, much easier, and we'll get into it. So Flexbox, or the full name of it is known as CSS Flexible Box Layout Module. That was the original name, and then now it has the Flexbox. Is a layout mode used almost exclusively in responsive websites that provides for better arrangement of all pages elements that behave in predictable mode. That means it helps you lay out everything easily without worry. So let's get to it. So one of the main property about Flexbox is that if you have something, let's say you have a style, you have two boxes, and you want to lay out properly, you just say you take the CSS or the class of that, and then you say display flex. If you do that display flex, that means now you activated flex. Now Flexbox is basically now taking over from other ways of doing things. So what you could do is this by default is a row, so it puts everything in row. So let's see that as an example within here. So in W3 schools, they have an example of Flexbox and what it does. So these are the things before Flexbox. This is how we used to style websites. You use block, you use inline, you use table, you use position and float also. So you use float. Float means you say, okay, this element is inline and this element is inline. They go into the same line. But now if you want to put this one to the right side, you say float to right. And now it goes to the right. And this one float to the left and it stays to the left. And then you have to use percentage to say 50%, 50%, give each one 50% space. And then you have to use padding and you have to use a lot of margins to make it fit perfectly. And that's a lot of problems, creates a lot of problems. So now, so FlexBox now is, it takes all these boxes and it makes them fit automatically. And we'll see how it does that. So FlexBox, there's something you need to understand FlexBox. And before we get to this, let me just explain the different elements of FlexBox. FlexBox has two main elements. One is a container, and let me zoom in. And by the way, this website, CSS Tricks, and the complete guide to FlexBox is the #1 place to go for FlexBox. So this is, every time I'm creating something with FlexBox, I don't remember how the directions and all that, the columns, all that go. So I just come to here to this website. I just go through here and I remember how things are laid out. So even if I'm doing something, I'll always reference this. So I'll share this. This is you have to bookmark this website because it's the best resource for FlexBox. So bookmark it in your browser so you don't lose it. So right now, there's two properties of FlexBox that are the most important. Number one is the container. Container is the parent one. Is the bigger container. So when we were looking at here, the container is the blue part. The blue part is it encompasses, it has all the elements in it. So that is where the container comes, the container. And then the elements are these items. So these items, you can make them, you could give them so many properties. You could say, okay, make all of them even in all this space. Make one of them bigger and make the rest of them smaller. Things like that. So you could change in so many ways. To get started with FlexBox, you say display flex as we have seen. You could also give it different properties. So some of the properties you could give is flex direction. So once you define flex display flex, right underneath it, you could say flex direction. So flex direction, you could define a couple of things. You could define a row. The row is the default, so you don't have to define the row. So when you say flex display flex, it's automatically a row. But if you want it to be column, or let's say like vertical, then you use the column one. And the other ones are just reverse and reverse in the row and column. There's also flex wrap, which automatically, if let's say you have several items that don't fit the space or the parent, then if you squish it, then if you say flex wrap and you put the wrap property, it will automatically move those elements at the bottom. So it will just create a new line automatically. You don't have to think about it. There's a lot of properties. There's flex flow. There's justify content. This one is really important. So let's say you want you have like 3 boxes of 3 elements, and you want them to fit within your space automatically. So this is how you do it. You could use either space between. So space between means it will take the space between and it will stretch out. So if there is a space between, it will just move everything away from each other. The one that I like is space around. That means it will fill out the space around. It will take the space that it has and it will fill it around equally around the elements that you have. So that's really important. So justify. So this is how you define it. You say justify content, and then you say space around. That's a good one. There's also let's see, align item. So this one is horizontal. So this one's horizontal. So if you want to make things fit to the right side, if you say flex end. If you want them to stay on the farthest at the beginning, you say flex start. But when we get to this element, align items, this one is vertical. So this means if you have a big space, and the elements are at the top, and you want them to be at the bottom, you could use that the align items. So a line item works in the cross axis. So cross axis is if you have a graph, the graph that is horizontal is the axis, the main axis. This is the main axis, and the one that is vertical is the cross axis. So so this one is the cross axis. It means it's up and down. So there's a lot of properties. Just to read about them. Align content. This means this one is this aligns the flex contain line when there is an extra space in the cross axis. So if there is an extra space in the cross axis, so here, as you can see right here, there's a space here. Then it takes all the elements and it just pushes them to that space. And you can make them fit by saying stretch. So most of the time people just say stretch, and that creates a really nice flow of it. It makes all the elements fit in this space, especially the cross axis. So there's a lot to read, but when we get to the example, you see how this is really powerful. There's order, all that stuff. So now you understand like how in general FlexBox does things. It kind of like allows you to lay out your elements automatically without you defining the percentage and stuff like that. So let's go to here and try an example. Let's go to this example. So as you can see here, we have 8 elements. So these 8 elements right here are just normal elements. They have a container, so flex container. You could just say container here. You don't have to say flex container. So this is just a normal class. It's a normal class. It's not. It doesn't have to be flex container. So it could just be container. Right here too. So container. So container. So you have a container. The container has elements. So right here, let's make them like a little less elements. Let's say maybe like 5 of them instead of that. So now what you could do is, so at the top, as you can see container, you say display flex. Now if we just remove that, see what happens, just to check here what would happen. See, as you can see, so they became vertical, and like there's nothing you could do about it. You have to kind of figure things out. But if you also say display inline, there's nothing here that changes, because inline doesn't make things horizontal. It just gives you enough space to put something in. So but if you say flex, then it will just automatically just change everything. Some of the things you could do is you could say here flex direction, and you could say column. The reason for that is this flex by default is a row, as you can see here, and flex column will make it a column. It will just put it back as it was with the inline. So that's what you could do. So another thing you could do is you could do wrap here, and we just remove this. Wrap will help you because let's say so from if we stretch out, now you have enough space. Now you don't have enough space. Now it just moves everything to the bottom automatically. So as you can see how powerful this is. So that just moves everything to the bottom, and this helps with like the responsive web design, because it is super powerful, because things are just moving without you thinking about it. So that's also a really nice thing to do. So there's so many properties that you could put into this. Let's see. Let's go back to this and see what properties we can apply to. Actually, let's go back to right here. So this is what we did. And another thing is, so the container, we just saw the container, how to set up the container. We tried the flex wrap. There's a flex flow. There's justify content. So we tried this, and we tried this too. And there's also this. So if you do the reverse, so let's just let's say here column reverse. Let's say column reverse. So just like that, column reverse, not column reverse. Let's say row reverse first. So row reverse will take the 5 and make it to the first one, and I just reverse. No, that's not what I meant. Okay, that's different. Row reverse will move. Okay, let's see. Let's make this one bigger so we can see clearly. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, so we have actually the wrap thing enabled, so it just made everything look weird. But now you can see the 5 is first and the 1 is the last. If you say column here, it does the same thing, but it's just horizontal. It's vertical. So that is the reverse. All right. Let's go to let's go farther and see more examples. Flex wrap, we talked about flex wrap, so it just fits the space that you need. Let's keep continue. There's flex wrap reverse. You could try all these properties. There's justify. So let's try justify content. So justify content, and let's remove this. So if we try justify content and we remove the flex wrap too. So justify content makes things really nice. So right now things are in the center. If we say, let's say something like space around. As you can see, space around makes it so that it fits, if everything fits nicely. So it takes the same percentage. If you say space between, it takes the space between, but not the space at the side. So it kind of looks like the first one is close to the wall and the last one is close to the wall. So it's not nice. But so I always say space around, and also you could use the one we just flex wrap. I think it was flex wrap wrap together, so that if something doesn't fit, it just moves to the next line. So it's really a nice way of putting things. So that is another property. We could try different properties. So there is flex start. So this will put it at the beginning, the end, all that stuff. So there's so many properties, but you will just learn by just trying things out. Let's try align item. So this is also another thing that might confuse you in the future. Align item. So align item, we have to have a height here. So we have to have a bigger space for the height for this thing to work. So right here, we have to add a height. So let's add this height so that we can have bigger space. So as you can see, center. So align item is center now. So if we say, let's say flex start, I think. Yeah, flex start. Flex start will make it so that all these will go to the top. So, and then flex end is the same thing. It goes to the bottom. There's also stretch, I believe. So stretch makes it really nice so that the elements fit the whole height. So if you want something, let's say an image or a picture to fit the whole thing, then that's kind of like how you usually do it. So that's really important to understand flex item. Align item. Align item basically is vertical. What other elements that we want to see? So we tried all that. So that's generally, the general idea of flex. It's basically to make everything center, make everything look nice. So if you want to center an element, so let's say we want to just center one element. Let's get rid of all the elements and center one of them. So we have one element. Let's get rid of the stretch. Let's get rid of the stretch. And then this is what we could do. We could say justify content center, and we could say align center. So these two will take the element and they will center them. So if you want to center something ever, this is how you center. I will say take a note from this. If you want to center something, you always write justify content center, align item center. That will center it right underneath. So even if we say something like 500, it will take that element and put it right in the middle. So that's how you center something in Flexbox. Just these 2 lines will center element. So that's really nice. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Flexbox. There's also, you could do responsive, which we will get into right in a minute after we come back from the break. You could use a media query to use with Flexbox, and that will help you create a very responsive website. So yeah, I'll take questions if you guys have any questions. If you're confused about anything, let's get started with that, and then we'll take a break and then come back, inshallah. Any questions you guys have about Flexbox? Anything you're confused about? Okay. I think you guys have some grasp understanding of what Flexbox is, and always another thing is always reference. As you can see, Aniga, I'm taking you guys to different websites. So we're going to W3 schools. We're going to a CSS tricks. So all these references are something that I always keep in my I bookmark. So always bookmark any website I share. Anything I share, just have your browser a place you could bookmark everything. So that will definitely help you in the future. And when you understand the concept and you could build something with it, you could just remove the bookmark. But when you're learning, it's important to bookmark things and like have a reference of like, okay, Flexbox, I want to center something. Okay, I bookmark the center something, or I wrote down a note somewhere so I can reference back. So that's really important. So yeah, that's Flexbox. We'll get back and we'll get started with responsive web design. So we will learn how to create a responsive website. I will spend an hour of that, about 45 minutes to build a basic responsive website together. So you guys can go ahead and build your own website for the assignment today. So yeah, I'll see you soon, guys. Let me put a timer, 10-minute timer. So see you soon. Okay. Let's get started. If you guys can see me. Okay. Let's get back to it. Let's close this. All right. Sorry about this. Close that. All right. So W3 schools. Responsive. Okay. So we'll get started with responsive web design, which is a part of our lecture. Let me know if you guys are back. Everything's good. Okay. Everyone is getting shaha or something. What a coffee. I drink coffee. I don't drink shah. Good. Let's get back to it. MashaAllah. Do you guys drink coffee or shah? Which one? Coffee?
Yeah, I do both. Like late coffee حدان صوبي بس وهبيك أصلا مسحنا.
MashaAllah.
12 p.m. 12 p.m. حدا إلى ضعفت بس هو.
Wow.
هبيك جرنت.
I can't function without coffee. I can't do anything without it. I'm very dependent. I do drink shah too, tea. But
morning شاي كلها لكن later
yeah.
evening وشاي سكعة حدا excess هلوة.
I feel like if you're Somali, you have to have a tea.
Yeah, right now yeah actually هذا سكري.
It's part of the culture.
دبعي بروجرام ريسك ويان إن كافيه دول تاجنادان.
Yeah. But mashallah, it's good. It's good to have both. Yeah. Let's get started, inshallah. It's good to have both. Let me just respond to the text. Okay. So today we're learning responsive web design, which is really, really important. And it's going to be something that we're going to be using from now on. So from now, what you will be building is just responsive. So that's something that we'll focus on, responsive web design, because most of it's just the internet. These days, people use devices, phones. All of us, we have phone, and they actually say that more than 50% now of websites are accessed to using a mobile device or using not a computer that's not a device that's not a computer. So it is essential to have a website that's responsive. And what does even responsive mean? So if we kind of define what responsive is, responsive is when the website changes the layout fluently and easily without the person thinking about it when they use another device. So the information and the content is the same, but the layout, how it's laid out, it's going to be different. So it just changes a little bit, but it fits that device completely without wasting a space. Before, it used to be where you have a website, and if you access it from mobile, there's a lot of space. You have to zoom in to see a text. The text is small, all these problems. So now things are just much easier. When you visit any website these days, it is flexible, and it makes it so that you feel like you visiting a a mobile app. So mashallah, so that's good. Let's see. So there's different types of responsive web design. There is a fixed layout web design. Fixed layout is fixed layouts are what our early website look like. So fixed layout are like the ones that I talked about, where the website you have to zoom in your device, and it looks like you're visiting from like a computer. It's not changing anything. If you visit from a computer or you visit from mobile, it's exactly the same. So that is a fixed layout, and that's what we need to avoid. There's some of the features of fixed layout are the layout is designed only for desktop. There is no media queries, and it's not good. There is a fluid layout, which is a little bit better than fixed layout. So fluid layout is fluid, but there is no it's not catered to a device. It's not thinking about a certain type of device. It's just a percentage. It says 100%, and it just goes from 100 to 1%. So it's fluid, but when you use from a mobile, it's not the elements are not changed with it's there's no media queries. So if there is no media queries, that means the layout will not change according to the device. It will just get smaller, or it will just get bigger. So that's fluid. So smaller, bigger, without changing how the layout looks like. So that is not good either. The reason for that is um, it's usually when it comes to, let's say, images or something like that, images become really small, or some of the text becomes small or something like that. So when you have boxes and things like that, they just don't work out properly. So fluid layout is nice, but it has limits itself. We can see an example of all of them. I'll show you an example in a minute. But the third one is adaptive layout, which is much better than fluid layout. So adaptive layout has a certain type of fluid elements into it. For example, adaptive layout websites may have hard-coded pixels used for layout using media queries for different devices. So it could be fluid. It could be it's nice, but it also, some of the elements, let's say the text is not, it's not fluid and it's not responsive. So adaptive layouts, another cheap or easy way to get more content out quickly for a business or more devices. So it's easy way to use it, but it's not the best way to use it. So this is not the modern way. Adaptive layout used to be good in the last maybe like 5 years ago, but now people use responsive layout. So this is the one that we use currently. So this is the one that you need to strive for, and you need to like fix your website according to this. So this is the modern way of doing it. It's a responsive layout. So we added everything we learned from fixed layout, from fluid layout, from adaptive layout, and combined it into a responsive layout. So responsive layouts combine features, fixed, adaptive, and fluid websites into a one seamless experience. Media queries are used to constrain responsive units to set the viewport, expands or shrinks. So it's really nice. So the website looks amazing. So let's look at a website. Let's look at something like maybe like GitHub. I'm sure GitHub has responsive layout. So let's look at it. So if we want to test the layout and how fluid it is and how it looks nice, we just go inspect, and there is a mobile inspector here. So right here at the bottom, right there, there is a toggle device toolbar. Click that, and you can change it to different phones right here, as you can see. So iPhone is going to look like that. So we could zoom in, so 100%. So for this website, the iPhone, that's how it looks like in the iPhone. And one of the things you'll realize is that there's no scroll bar at the bottom. So that's one of the things that we will learn viewport helps with. So if you add viewport in your header of your HTML, you will not have a scroll bar. So as you can see, it looks really nice. Other devices is the same. This iPhone, Galaxy 5, Moto G4, as you can see, looks nice. And also, as you can see here, one of the things you will realize is that the menu here is collapsed. So now if you do that, it comes back. If you do that, it goes back. And the whole thing is cleaned up. It looks nicer. So let's test out the responsive layout. So responsive layout, how you know responsive layout is that elements. So if you're using the website from a browser, this is how it looks like. So now if we shrink it, you will see some elements that will disappear, like the menu, the sidebar. All those things will kind of like adjust or change. So now we're at like 100, 1,015 width. So the width is changing. So if the width goes under like 700, you see something will change under 700. So as you can see right there, right there. Let me zoom in so you guys can see. So right here we have 700, 700, 800, 776, 768, 770. It changes to that. So that is the breaking point. That's when you use media queries to change the layout. So you say, okay, so from there on, let's change the layout to this. So you say, okay, let's change a couple of things. Let's remove this bar, this whole thing, put it in its own place. Let's remove the search, and put the search somewhere else. I don't think it's here. You say also, let's remove the icon of the person. Let's remove this plus, all this stuff. Let's clean it up basically. And as you can see here, right here, as you can see, remote and the website and the email, they're horizontal now. But when you make them, so when they go under 700, they become stacked. So most of the time you will stack things. So you put on top of each other so that it's easier to view it in a mobile. And the more you go, the lesser things become, as you can see. So things just disappear. But in reality, most of the time, it's better to put them somewhere else so that it's easier to view. All right. So that's responsive, and that's how it usually works. And that's how you should think of is, you have to sacrifice some things. You have to kind of like remove some things or put them in somewhere else. Like the menu is right here, and the search was put here. So the search that would disappear is in right here. So, and also the person's profile is right here. So you don't sacrifice anything. You just make things organized in an easier way so people can see it. And you also make the text bigger. So the more you zoom out, the smaller the text becomes. Actually, zoom out from here. So if you zoom out from here, the text becomes smaller. So if we actually get out of this and we just a normal website and you zoom in, the text becomes bigger, as you can see here. The reason for that is that this text is not, most of the time, is not pixels. So let's see actually the property of the text. Where is it? So the title, we have the title here. What is the font size of the title? So H1, as you can see here, it's not shown right now. Where is it? So H1. So this one is the pixels. So H3, but most of the time you make it M or rem. So one of those, you use one of those. Let's say the title here. Let's see the text, the text size of that one. Let's see. As you can see here, margin is M. So if you use M or rem, those are, we will learn in a bit, but those are basically a responsive units. Yeah, so responsive units. So M or rem, those are responsive units, but it's definitely something we will learn in a minute. But yeah, so that's responsive layout, and we'll get started with the example. So let's get started. Do you guys have any question of that before we move on? Anything that you're confused about? What is responsive? What's adaptive layout? Okay, so let's just move on to the next section, which is we'll just build a quick web page with the responsive and immediate queries. So let's open here. Let me bring this. So actually, we already have this open in here. So we have that folder open here. Basically, this folder is has just images, has 3 images here, and I'll create a index.html. I'll also create styles.css. It's better to put the styles in its own folder and eventually, but now it's just example. So I'm gonna grab the HTML so that we don't have to focus on the HTML. So let me just grab the HTML from my example. We just focus on the CSS. So let me paste my HTML. So this HTML basically says that the website is called A Great Idea, and we have a viewport, as you can see here. We have the viewport set, and don't worry about this chart set. This one is usually used when there is a characters in the website where they are not just English characters, just like Chinese or Arabic or something like that. So this one, viewport is important. So viewport, we talked about it. It helps your website adapt to devices automatically, and then it just looks for like your media queries, and like it knows like if the website is responsive. So always just set this. This is basically how you set it. You never change it. So I'm gonna share that. Put it in your notes or somewhere. I'm gonna share it in the Slack. Let's just put it like that. So that's how you set it always. You put it in the header, and it has to always be there. We also have a font from Google. So if you want to get a font from another website, you just get the link of the font. So now we have two fonts, Bangers and Titanium. But you don't have to know this right now. But this is how you usually link a outside font. So Google has a lot of fonts that you could take from, and they're all free. So they give you the link of the font, and then you put it here. And then if you use that font in anywhere in your CSS, it will automatically render in the browser. We also have our styles file right here. We have a section before the header where there is the logo. We're doing it a little bit different than the last one. So the section basically helps. So this section is basically the logo and also a tab navigation, and we will see how we're going to use that. This section, the header section, is a text and image. So it's a hero section. Hero section is like when you go to websites, they have a big slider. So it's like that, but now we just have an image and also just a text on the side. We have a section for text. So there's two texts next to each other, block text. There's also an image in the middle of it. So there's an image picture in the middle. And I'll show you an example of how the website looks like. Let me give me a second. The result we're looking for, but we might not get there. Just to let you know. So maybe you guys can see. Can you guys see this? My screen changed. If you can see this, let me know.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this is kind of like the idea of what I was trying to get into. There is the menu, there is the great logo, and then the text, and then the image, the hero image. There's the two texts here. We could zoom in. The two texts here, and there's the image and more text. So we're trying to practice more of a FlexBox. So that's why we have so many layouts. And also this is already responsive. So if we make it smaller, as you can see, things change. So as you can see, things just stack up and things like that. So that's the idea. We will move this to the side so that we can focus on the lesson. So let's get started with the CSS. So one thing that we need to do is, before we do anything, is by let me just save this first. By putting something called reset, CSS reset. And let me just grab my browser. So just always, when you're building a website, start with CSS reset. CSS reset is a set of CSS that is already pre-built for you, and it resets the browser. Basically, it tells the browser, okay, make everything 0. The margins, everything, make it 0. So this guy made it, whatever his name is, Meyer Web. So everybody uses this. So whenever you're building a website, to get started with the website, you copy this whole thing, you put it at the top of your CSS file. That's the first step of doing anything. And then you could just put a comment here. You could say something like, let's put a comment here and say end of reset. So that means you don't worry about it. So now you start your own CSS. So now if we can't look at the website because there's nothing happened. But this resets everything. As you can see, the HTML, the body, the header, the everything, it sets them to 0. It sets everything to block, and that just makes everything equal without you thinking, without you worrying about if something is going to mess up, or the default element is going to mess up. So now, if we just go here and open this, let's open this to live server. As you can see, our website is a mess. And we just do this. We put right next, or we just keep it like that. Let's keep it like that. So if we go like this and we go to CSS, the first thing we need to do is we need to set a couple of things. We need to set the body and the default CSS. So let's do that. So I'm just gonna copy this because these are the defaults, and I'm gonna explain. So these are something that you will always have in your CSS if you build in a project. So right here underneath it, we're gonna set the default elements. So we're basically saying our body will have a max width, how big it is, of 1,200 pixels. We'll have a margin of auto and 0 and auto. That will make it so that everything is centered. We'll have the font family of the Titanium Web, which is the one we get from Google. We set the box sizing. So if I explain a little bit what box sizing is, actually we can go to let's actually figure it out. Box not box model. It's easier to like actually read it than to just explain it. So box sizing, this is where it explains. So I'm also Googling this so you guys know how to like do this with, you don't worry about if something you're stuck, you just Google it so you can understand it. So box sizing property sets how the total width and the height of element is calculated. So for example, if you have box sizing box content right here, that means the width of this child element and the width and the height. I would say the width and the border height. I mean the border width are calculated within here. So it's counting for this border. But if you say box border, if you say this means it's counting every border. So it's counting this border, and this border, all the width of the borders, and it's combining all of them so that you know what you're getting into. So this means you don't have a border or element that you're not thinking about, that you're not aware of. So now it's calculating everything together so that you have a space, you know what you have, and it shows you, the browser shows you the space that you need to fill in. So it's always good to have that set right here. Also, I said paragraph font, I said 1.2 rem. So let's talk about a little bit about the rem just quickly. Let's talk about CSS units. CSS units are really important. So there are different types of CSS units. There are the absolute ones, which is the pixels, the one we're using, the centimeters, all these are fixed. So these are like, they don't change, they're not responsive. And then there is the responsive ones, which are right here. So these are responsive, and these are the ones you need to use if you want to create a responsive website. So the ones we're going to use is M and rem. Those are the two things we're going to use. M is basically relative to the font size of the element. So 2 rem means 2 times the font size of the current font. So this is a little bit confusing, but let's say you have a general font. So let's say this is the general font. And this is the parent. Let's say this is the div parent. If the div parent has 1.2 rem, then the lower one, if you put the M, it means take 1.2 rem and double it. So that is so one rem is equal to the double of I mean 2 rem is equal to the 2 times the parent element. But also rem is relative to font size of the root. So 2 things to keep in mind when you're thinking about the rem and m. M is looking at the parent element. So the parent element means if you go to HTML, so if you want to change the font size of this element to M is going to look at the font size of this element. So it will look for if there's font size of this element. If there's no, it will just look at the body. So, and it will say, okay, the body has a font size. I'm going to take that and times 2. But rem is different because it's looking for the root. The root is every browser has a font size root, default font size root. So the default is, let's say we'll make this, let's actually check if this is actually rem or m itself. I want to show you an example. It's kind of hard to like wrap around your head, but the good thing about rem is that it changes the size when you change the zoom element. So if you zoom in, as you can see here, actually I think this is a rem, it changes the size because it's looking for the root, and this is the root. This is the browser's root. So it gets bigger as you zoom in. So that's the only difference between these two. So see, it gets really big. So this is rem. So that's the difference. If this was a pixel, it will not change. It will just be small. Let's actually change that. Let's see. Let me put something like font size 20 pixels. Let's make it like 8 pixels small. Now we made it 8 pixels. Okay, so we made this text for 8 pixels. Now if you zoom in or zoom out, it will change, but it will not change as much. It will just get closer, but it will not change the size of the font. The size of font will stay the same. The size of font will stay the same, as you can see here. It will be 7 pixels. But if this was the rim, it will change the rim automatically to match with the percentage of the root. So that's the only difference. Always use rim if you can, and if you use m, then you have to kind of account for the parent element and things like that. So it kind of confuses you. So use always a rim if you can. If you cannot, then it's fine. And also, if you want to know how much is the rim, like so one rim, what is that in pixels? There's actually a website convert. You could say convert rim to pixels or pixels to rim. I'm gonna share that link to where you can convert elements. So here you put the pixels. So you say 50 pixels is equal to what? So let's see. Actually, is this the website? There was a website I had to call. I used it before. There was a graph, actually. Not a graph. There was a table. Okay, so this is a good website. So 10 pixels is equal to 0.625 rem. So I think it was 16 pixels. Yeah, 16 pixels equal to 1 rem. 32 pixels is equal to 2 rem. So that's how you know the conversion. So keep that in mind. I'll share that that difference. So you already know what pixels are. You know how big they are. So now you know rem and how it works. Okay, that took time, but it's good to understand. So we have that set up. Let's get started, Marka, the rest of the design, the styling. Now we're just gonna target the logo. Let's target the logo, and it's right here. This class logo. Let's target it. So we say logo, and now what we want is we want to display the logo as a block. We also want to add a margin to it, and we use 1 rem. You could also use the margin not only for text but also for spaces. So we say, and remember 1 rem is 16 pixels. So those are the kind of things to keep in mind when you're working with this. So we targeted that. The next thing we'll target is the nav bar, which is right here. So nav bar. So we'll say nav. And we'll give it display flex, because the nav is a list of things. So the nav is a container, and these are the items for the container. And then we'll say margin, not margin, flex direction, and we'll set this to column. I don't know why it's set in a column. It's not supposed to do that to start with, but we'll see. Oh, this is a mobile first. Okay, so the design we're doing right now is called mobile first. This means that the design we're doing, if we don't add the media queries, it looks like a mobile, and then it changes. So mobile first, and desktop first are two different things. So and I'll give you more information about that another time. Text align. Let's say center. So now let's see the changes that happened. Okay, so as you can see here, it's mobile first. The reason why it's mobile first is because like when we do that, is as you can see it changes. So let's actually make it like that, so we could see the changes that's happening right away. So now let's target the elements. So these elements, the navigation. So let's target them. Let's say nav A, and we'll give it a color of black. We will also say text decoration is none. We will give it a border. Remember, we're doing a mobile first. So this is the only thing to keep in mind right now, is because the reason why we're giving a border and stuff like that is because we want to make it look like how it looks in the mobile. And then after that, we'll change it to desktop. So let's give it something like a B4. It's good. Let's give it a border bottom. Let's give it 1 pixel, solid, same thing. B4. Okay. So when we do that, as you can see here, the changes is happening automatically. If we zoom in, that's how it looks like. Another thing we need to do is we need to target the header. So the header is right here. The header is right here, and this is the hero image. So the hero image, let's target that. We'll say header, and we'll give it text. We'll align it, text align, and we say center. We'll also give it padding at the bottom, and we'll give it 3 rem. Remember, we're doing responsive. We say margin, and margin, just let's say 0 and 1 rem. And you guys, as you know, 0 targets the top and bottom, 1 rem targets the left and right. So we learned that in last lesson. Let's give it a border bottom of 2 pixels, solid and black. So now let's save it. As you can see, the text looks nice. So it's kind of like aligning. Let's target the header button, which is this one right here. The header, let's target button. Let's give it a border of 1 pixel, solid and black. Let's color it black. Let's give it a padding of 0.1 rem, which is really small, and then 2.5 rem, which is kind of big. So if we save it, as you can see, the button is a little bit better. Okay, what else can we target? Let's target the image. So the image has a ID. So right here, the image has an ID, the hero image. So let's target that. So we say in ID, you don't have to nest the CSS. You could just say hero image, and then display none. So display none, we say display none is because we're doing mobile files. Remember, this is mobile files. So we don't want this huge image to appear in a mobile. And then we say section. We target the section right here. So we'll start with this section or all the sections. So we say section margin 0 and 1, 0.1 rem. So we save it. So you can see the images appeared and it looks nicer now. Let's target the nav bar, which is right here. What is the nav bar? So the nav bar is the top one, I think. Yeah, it's right here, nav bar. So let's target the nav bar, which is an ID. Let's target it, nav bar. I think it's a nav bar. So what are we gonna do nav bar is we're gonna give you the margin of 0 to get started. And then we'll target the divs. So section, so it's a section div, and these divs are right here. So if we go to section, this is the div. So each div has its own thing. So div will say margin rem, 2 rem, and then we'll say 0. Now it just gives a little more space there. And we'll also target the H1 for the sections. So this H1, I mean H2, sorry. So section H2. We're going quick because we don't have a lot of time, but you could also rewatch the video and go slow, inshallah. So H1 will say font size is we'll say 1.25 rem, which is about 20. I think it's about like maybe like 18 pixels. So this is the one we're targeting right now, and then we'll give it a margin of 0, 0, and 0.5 rem. So just gives a little more space here. Let's target the paragraph, which is this one. So we say section P. We'll say font size is equal to, let's say 0.9 rem, and give a margin of 0. Margin 0. So as you can see, it becomes a little bit smaller, a little more manageable. We could also add some little bit of a text align. I don't know. We have to say close this, text align, and say justify. So it nicely fits the page. And we could also add some padding. Let's add a little bit of padding. Let's add like padding to the, let's add it like this 0 and 2, 1 rem, 0.5 rem. Yeah, so it gives both sides some padding. Okay, so we targeted that. Now the next thing we need to do is we can do secondary, which is this section, secondary detail. We might not have enough time to do all that. Let me see how much we need to do. We have to jump into media queries soon. So I think we're just gonna get rid of it for now so we can save time. So this section will just get rid of it. All right, let me see okay. So we get rid of that. Save it. So now, as you can see, it's coming together. We have the image, we have the context and that. So the last thing we need to do is we're gonna skip that. Let's assign the middle image. The middle image has its own an ID and a class, I mean. So middle image. So we say dot middle image. think that's how it is. Image. And we'll give it a max width of 100%. Okay, so that just makes it fit nicely. All right. Now we're gonna check this address. We're just gonna change the address text. So let's say, I think we're just gonna keep it the way it is for now. Let's target the footer for now. We're just gonna add one thing to the footer, not much. So footer, we're gonna say text align center, and we'll also add font size of 0.8 rem. So as you can see, nicely fits there. Okay. Next thing would be we need to do media queries now. So media queries are so now if you make the website bigger, this will look bad. So this looks really bad. So because it's not for desktop. So let's make it a desktop. So this is a reverse way of doing it. First you do the mobile and then you do the desktop. But you could also do the desktop and then change it with the media queries and make it a mobile. So to do media queries, all we need to do is we use the @media, and then we tell the browser. So if the browser reaches minimum width of 500, if it reaches minimum width of 500 pixels, then do this. So I'll show you what that actually means. So some of the things we will change is we'll change the navigation to flex direction. We'll make it a row. We'll also change the justify content. We'll add justify content and make it space around. So it's space around, so it fits all over the space. So now there's no difference, but if we stretch it out, you see the change. So as you can see here, looks nicer. So now this is under 500. So if we go above 500, it changes. So that's the min width, where that's min width coming from. Another thing we need to do is we need to target the nav A, and we want to make the border none, since we had like border 0. We need to target header h1, which is this one, the text, the main call to action text, and change the font size, make it bigger. Font size for rem. We'll also change the margin, the bottom margin, to something a little bit more space, 1.5 rem. So now if we stretch out, you see the change. See? So there's no borders in this one. This one's big. And we'll make more changes as we go. Okay, let's add more media queries. Let's say header button. Let's add font size, so we can make it a little bit bigger. Let's add a 1 rem font size. Let's also target a couple of things. Let's target this section. Where is it? The text section, primary detail ID. Let's target that so that we can make the text next to each other. So now when you stretch out, they're just stacked up. So now as you can see, they're stacked. We just want them to be next to each other. So what are we going to do is we're going to target the primary ID, primary detail, details. We'll also target the secondary, but we deleted the secondary. So we just target this. So we say display flex, and justify content, we'll say space around. As you can see, I really like the space around text. So now when we stretch and we reach 500, you'll see the change. See? Now it's nice and clean. It looks pretty cool. So next thing we need to target is the div. We need to target the div space. But actually we could skip that because it's connected to the secondary and we deleted that. We need to target the nav bar, create a new media query so that when it reaches 800, it changes. Instead of 500, this logo comes here on the left. And also we get the bigger image here too, and we move this to the side. So let's create a new media query. So this media query starts from here and it ends here. Now, if we start a new media query, we just say at media. So every time you want to change the size, this is how you change it. So min width and it's equal to 800 pixels. So if it reaches 800 pixels, do this. So now we target the nav bar and we give it a couple of properties. We say display flex. We say flex direction. We give it row. We give it row reverse. The reason for that is we'll see. I'll show you the example how that changes. We'll justify content. We say center on center for a line item. So this one is remember is the vertical align item. We'll say center. So we're basically centering. See, this is where we use the centering. So we center something in the middle of the thing. So that's how you center something. We'll say padding. We'll give a padding of 1 rem, and 0. So this is the top. The 1 rem. The first one is the top section, and the 0 one is the right and left. We'll give it a margin bottom so that we could just push it away of 3 rem. So now if we stretch out, you'll see it changes. So now it's like that. 800, we're gonna get close to 800. Let's see, 800 is coming. See, 800. So now it looks weird because we didn't define all these changes. So, but we'll define it, and so they can fit together. Okay, so now let's define the logo. So let's say dot logo and say margin is equal to 0, 0, 0, 2 rem. And as you can see, it's the left side. So we're giving space to the left side. And we'll say, okay, and we'll add something to the nav. Nav itself, nav will say nav A. We will say margin. So we're aligning basically 0, 1.2 rem. So we're giving it space to breathe the elements. And then also we'll target the header, which is this section. This is the header section. We'll say display flex. Display flex, and we'll give it justify content space between this time. And this helps us with the image. So we'll get the image back right now in a minute, but it helps to give it the image space. We'll say header div, which is right here. We go to header, this div. So these two divs, we're giving them a space percentage that they gonna take. Div, we say width, we say 50%. So now if we move, you're not gonna see the image, but this innovation will move to the left, as you can see. And as you can see, the menu looks nice, the logo looks nice next to each other. Okay, the next thing would be the image. So we just target the image, hero, we say hero image. I think it was a hero image. So now the hero image will make it a block, not an inline block, so that it just takes its own space. We'll give it a width of 350 pixels, and we'll give it height of auto so that it fits nicely. So now if we zoom out after 800 pixels, you see that the image will appear. Boom. So as you can see, that's pretty much it, I think. That's pretty much it. We aligned everything. Everything looks nice. When you make it smaller, everything changes, as you can see. Everything changes, aligns. We could give a little more space here at the top. So that would be the header. So let's just go to header and give it a little more space. But that's pretty much it. So we could say margin top. Margin top. We could say something like 2 rem. See, it's too big. 1.2 rem. So yeah, I'll give it space there, and we could also give the button a space. We give the same margin so that it just gives a breathing space. But yeah, so that's it for the today's project that we did. For your assignment today, I hope you guys didn't sleep. For the assignment today, you go here, you click here, and this is your assignment today. So you take the website you did yesterday, the Fatima restaurant that you finished yesterday. If you haven't finished it, try to finish it as much as you can, but then change the layout so that it looks like this. It looks like the design here. So it looks like this. So when you make it smaller, like a mobile, it looks like this. So that's your job today. Take that and change it so that it looks like it's mobile friendly. And when you zoom in, zoom out, it's fluid. So use all the things we learned today to do that. Inshallah, I'm sure. And also try to use GitHub. Try to fork from here, and then go here and then copy this link. Go to get your terminal or git bash, and then just open it in a folder. So what you could do is you could say cd document, for example, document, and you cd into the document. Let me make that bigger. You cd into document. Cd means you go into it, and then you cd into whatever folder, maybe Ghibli School folder or something that you created, and then you say git clone, and then you paste the link we just copied from here. Oh, not that. You copy this link, and then you say git clone, paste it, and then you say enter. And now we're just gonna copy all the files to your computer, open it in the editor, make the changes, and copy the CSS and everything you did from the Fatima restaurant, put it in this folder, and then commit your changes, and then submit your form, inshallah. So that's your job today. We will have a stand up, but if you cannot come, let me know. If you cannot come to the stand up, just push your work. If you cannot finish it until today or tonight, no problem. Just finish it as much as you can. But try your best. It's best to try. At least maybe do half of it than not to try. So if you cannot do it, just do half of it. Maybe do like one flexible FlexBox element, or just align three elements. Do a small responsive. Maybe just do the menu, the navigation, make it responsive. Just do as much as you can. So that's the main thing. Do you guys have any question? It's your turn now. Any questions? All right. No questions, I assume.
Almar. Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Media query.
Yeah.
Kaliya maxaa lahaa markii desktopka iyo size-yada kale, device-yada kale loo isticmaalaya la isticmaalaa, mise even mobile-ka markaad responsive ka dhigaysid xitaa waa ku samayn kartaa media query.
Waad u isticmaali kartaa all of them. So waxaad samaynaysaa, waxaad galaysaa, for example, waxaad leedahay sizes of default sizes of devices. Waxaad ogaanaysaa deviceska size kala yihiin. So default sizes of devices. And so spelled devices wrong. So ogaanaysaa marka all the devices. So mobile how big it is. So the mobile width you just need the width. So the width for the mobile is usually anywhere between 500 pixels to 700 pixels, and not even 700, 600. The tablets are usually between 700 to like 1,000. And desktops are usually anywhere between like 1,000 pixels to about like 1,600, 1,200. So each one is different. So what you could do is you could still use the media query to say, hey, if the device is, so this one we did it in reverse, so it's a little confusing, but you could say, okay, if we reach 800, which is the tablet, make it this way. If we reach 1,200, this is the minimum. So you starting from the bottom. So you're saying, okay, 500 is the mobile. So anything before 500, so which we did right here, anything before 500 on the mobile side, do this. So this is, you could actually just say this one is the mobile. You could just say, put a what do you call, comment here, and just say mobile, and then just put your comment here and say this is mobile 500. You could say this is a tablet, so just put this one as a tablet. So assume this is a tablet, and then after that it's the end. So you don't have to put anything after that. That means when you leave tablet, that means it is a desktop, so you're good to go. So so you just need these two, the 500 and the 800. So if you use those two, you're fine. So this is a tablet, this is a mobile. So you could use the media query for both, inshallah.
Thank you.
No problem, bro. Okay, guys, we'll conclude here. If you have any question, send it to me, inshallah, and I'll get to it. Keep working on it. Try your best. You know, this will help you in the long term. You could build the websites, responsive websites, and everything. So, inshallah, try your best. Khair have a good night, and have a good day. And I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. And I'll see you stand up. If you cannot come to the stand up, then I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. All right, guys, take care. Assalamu alaikum.